While a madman ripped through the Sandy Hook Elementary School that day in December, shooting everything in sight, Caitlin Roig, a first grade teacher, she barricaded her students in a bathroom, protecting them from the massacre, one of the many scenes of just unbelievable heroism.
So I said, no, we just have to be absolutely quiet. I said, there are bad guys out there now. We need to wait for the good guys. I said, I need you to know that I love you all very much and that it's going to be okay, because I thought that was the last thing they were ever going to hear.
Now, one of the students that unbelievable teacher saved is Lauren Milgram. Her brother, Dalton, both thankfully survived the shooting. And their father, Eric Milgram, joins us right now to sound off on what happened or didn't happen in the Senate yesterday. And before we even get there, I think every parent, wherever they were in this country, just for a second, and I saw that 60 Minutes interview where one of those Newtown parents said, just look in the mirror and imagine it was you, and it was your family, your school, your town. And we all held our kids a little closer, but for you, this wasn't a hypothetical. Walk me through that awful December day when you got a call or you got an alert that all of a sudden something just was going horribly wrong at Sandy Hook.
Yeah, I'll even start before that. When I left that morning, and I'm not a believer in karma and these other things, I think people should be, good people, but I don't think there's some cosmic force that modulates that. But on that particular morning, every morning I give the kids a hug before I go to work, unless it's one of those days I go in particularly early. And on that particular morning, I remember I was running late, and the kids were down in the basement, and I almost went out of the house without giving them the morning hug. And something just told me, said, don't let this be the day that if something were to happen that you didn't give the kids a hug. So I yelled down in the basement for them to come upstairs, and they did the usual, come on, Dad, just go to work. Gave them the hug, left, and as I was leaving, I saw Neil Heslin with his son, Jesse Lewis. They live closely, very close to us. And Jesse looked so happy that morning, and they were coming out of Jesse's house, and Neil was going to be taking him to breakfast. And I remember stopping to let them pass because the road's rather small there in Sandy Hook. And Neil waved at me like he knew I was in a hurry, and he said, go on by. And so I went by, and I remember waving at them. That's the last time I saw Jesse Lewis alive. Later that morning, I went into work, had my early morning phone call, and my wife had kept trying to call me, but I didn't take the call because I was in a meeting. And this was, I remember it was at 10:08. My boss actually came in, my supervisor. His wife had called him, because my wife had called her, and said, there's been a shooting at your children's school. We don't know how bad it is. You need to get home. And it normally takes me about 45 minutes to drive from New Haven to Sandy Hook. I got there in about 30 that day. And as I was listening to the radio the entire way home, the reports of the carnage kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I just kept thinking to myself, it's probably not going to be that bad.
Then you get there.
Well, at that point, getting to the school was really tough. We were told as parents not to approach the school, and I told my wife, I'm not waiting. I'm going to do my best and get as closely as I could. And so we had a neighbor drive us down to the school, and we couldn't get close to the school because the road had been closed and the traffic had really backed up. So I actually was dropped off maybe 3/4 of a mile from the school. When I walked up on foot and I got onto the main road outside where the fire station was, I knew it was really bad. There were SWAT team members everywhere. There were, every kind of rifle you could imagine, from assault rifles to shotguns to sniper rifles, people in full tactical gear, undercover police officers. I knew it was really bad, and I approached the firehouse, and I could not find my children. And I remember asking one of the helpers there, where do you go if you can't find your children? And they said, you don't know anything yet? And I said, no. So they led me to the back of the firehouse and with the other parents, and just the feeling, in that room, I never want to feel that again.
I'm sure there isn't a day goes by that you don't think about what that teacher did for your child.
She's a hero.
I mean, that's such an overused term here, but if it ever belongs to somebody, it's to that woman. And I just, you know, you're just trying to imagine if it's your kid, that she had the presence of mind to barricade those kids and put herself between the gunmen and your kids and other kids here. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I've asked her, I said, you know, what made you think to do that? I mean, myself even, I've been around guns all my life, and you know, I'm very comfortable with firearms. My first impulse might have been to just go out in the hall and see what was going on. I said, what made you think in such a short time to get those kids in that bathroom? She said, you know, I don't know. I didn't even know what it was. I assumed it was gunfire, but I knew it was bad, and I had to get them in the bathroom as quickly as possible. And for those who don't know, this is a small single toilet bathroom, you know, that they use for the smaller kids. They don't want them going out in the halls. If you see it, there's just a toilet inside, and there's a sink on the outside. It makes you wonder, how did she get herself and all of those kids to even fit in that bathroom?
From what I understand, Newtown is was an amazingly tight, is an amazingly tight community. You mentioned your neighbor who unfortunately lost his son that day. What's it been like since then? I mean, it's raw, but a lot of this country gets to turn to the next story every day. It's there, and even to the fortunate ones, if that's the right way to describe you, every day you see it, right?
Those of us whose children came home, no matter what we experienced or our kids experienced, we are the fortunate ones. I mean, you know, if anybody feels bad for us, I thank them for that, but think about those families whose children did not come home. Imagine that that was your children. It's really tough, but there is a resilience in the community. It was a great place before, just like you said, Richard, but at the same time, after this, there's definitely a sense of, you know, people wanting to go out of their way to help each other.
So in the aftermath of this, we talked about it here. The president made a very impassioned, as did so many other people, that said, okay, out of this tragedy, at least we should make this country a safer place. Listen, there were four things we all talked about. They were talking about assault weapons, they were talking about ammo clips, they were talking about the background checks, and the idea that what happened yesterday in the Senate, forget about the House, that we couldn't even get something passed that 90% of Americans want, and 3/4 of the NRA wants. I think the president was genuinely really PO'd yesterday, and I think shameful is a polite term for what happened. From somebody who, this isn't some hypothetical debate, what was your reaction when you heard some of your neighbors being called props, and people saying that, you know, treating it like it was some esoteric debate here instead of something that happened less than 120 days ago in America?
I would say, were the families of the victims of 9/11 used by George W. Bush as props? I would challenge these people to think carefully, you know, when they say things like that. That if you look at the number of people killed in 9/11 since Newtown, we've had essentially the same number, actually more people killed with guns here in this country. And so just because an event is rare does not mean the impact is not severe. And just this actions of this single individual in Newtown, ignore the emotional toll for a moment. You know, let's talk capitalists for a minute here, because we're subsidizing, you know, tremendous violence in this country. I would estimate, and I wish somebody would do the numbers on this, that the toll to our community has probably been over $1 billion for the action of one individual. Is that acceptable? And I would challenge those senators who voted against this, and I don't know their motivations. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of aspersions being cast. I think I know, and most of us know, but we don't truly know why those senators voted against this the way that they did. But my question to them, is the situation, the status quo that we have in this country today, acceptable to you? Is this the price we have to pay for the country that we live in? Is there nothing that we can do? And I would challenge anybody who viciously rejects any reform to ask themselves that question, to say, can we, the United States, the greatest country in the world, not do better? Because when you look at the OECD countries and you rank order them by their GDP and then by their violence stats, you take out all the Latin American countries, the United States ranks highest in gun ownership, and we also rank highest in murder by firearms. 74% of the murders that were committed in 2011 in Connecticut were done with firearms. So for people who say, you know, let's focus on overall violence, not gun violence, that's a lie, because the majority of the murders were committed with firearms, and the numbers for 2012 are going to look even worse.
And I'm talking to a gun owner now.
That's right.
I've talked to different people who are very attached to this issue, who are maddest about two different things. One, that the rhetoric that was used surrounding this was, forget about insensitive, it was offensive. And the other one was, listen, you can have a debate in this country, but at least you got to fight fair with the facts. And they felt that this was about lies, not about truths, and that what drove this decision yesterday, beyond the political cowardice, was all this phoniness of registries, et cetera, and kicking down doors in middles of night.
Let me address that, and I don't mean to interrupt you here, but I want everybody to notice this. The NRA, I don't know this for a fact, but my belief is they're not worried about gun confiscation. You know, Rhode Island used to require registration of firearms back in colonial days. If you're going to go to war, you need to know how many soldiers you have, how many rifles you have, how many bullets you have, and a good part of that is taking an inventory. And so this is not about government tyranny and taking of your weapons. That's not what registration is about. It's about liability, and it's about increasing the size of your market, because if you were to put in place real liability and chain of custody for firearms, it would not inconvenience law-abiding gun owners, myself being one of them, but it does decrease the market, because you're going to think twice now when you go to purchase that firearm and go, you know, if I'm not really careful here, I could be charged with criminal negligence, or this could be traced back to me, or if I was like the case of the young lady who purchased the firearms for the Columbine killers, there might be real repercussions, and that's what they don't want, because it decreases demand and it decreases the size of their market.